Well, good morning, everybody. We're reading through Deuteronomy 17 to 20 this morning, and I'm going to just really speak on what I speak on every year at this time because it's something I don't hear anybody else talking about. It's really it's the government of Israel. And when we see in the first chapter, there's the three offices that are talked about. A lot of people miss the high judge. Um, there is supposed to be one judge, like Moses was. Moses was the high judge, and he had judges under him, and so that office was created. So there was the high judge, kind of like our Supreme Court. Um, there was the high priest, and sometimes the high judge could be the high priest, and sometimes it was another priest. It was often from the Levitical family, and then there was the king who was planned for before they entered into the land. So God knew the direction that they would be going into. So he made allowances for that king. And sometimes the king was the high judge, as we see, as mentioned when we read through the lives of the kings. We'll see that oftentimes the people came in to receive judgment from the king. But that could also have been because there was a breakdown in these roles. And each of them had a place, but it wasn't just the three. But let's concentrate on the three for a second here. Each of them had their roles, each of them had their assignments and their specific instructions. Uh, the king was actually to write down his instructions, and the reason the king had these instructions, and some people think he had to copy out the law of Moses. That's not what it was. He was to copy down the law that was given to him as a king, and he was supposed to remind himself of that every morning, remind himself that of every evening, because God didn't want the power centralized. He did not want it concentrated on one person, and there was danger with a king that could happen, and did happen. And the rules for the king were quite simple. He wasn't to have too many horses. He wasn't to have any trade with Egypt. He was not to have too many wives, and he wasn't to have too much money. Now, when you look at that, you know that Solomon broke all four of those laws. So, and you saw what ended up happening to him. Um, then we have a fourth office that is introduced a chapter later, and the first three really are administrative offices. This is how things function. But there was a fourth office, which was the check. It was the one that would keep everything in order, and that was the prophet. And the prophet was the living voice of God, the current voice. The priests were responsible. The high priest was responsible for making sure that the law is adhered to, the spiritual law. The judge is responsible for the case laws, to make sure that justice and righteousness is happening in the land. The king was responsible for the defense and the prosperity of the land, and the living voice of God, which was the prophet, was the voice for today. This is what God is saying today. And this is important. It helps us understand the whole body of Christ. Everything was centralized to Jesus. Jesus was everything. He. If you look at the fivefold, the trainers, you'll see that all of that was in Jesus. But that is never to be centralized in one human being. That's why we have the gifts. All the gifts of the Spirit are spread out in the body, because not one person can carry all those gifts. The trainers, which is a form of authority in the church, as servants. Um, this is the authority of Christ that is spread out. Um, it's not to be concentrated on one person. Now, when you look at it, we've got it wrong. We usually do get it wrong. We have it wrong in the church. We focus on one person. We make the pastor the most important person, and because we love this hierarchy stuff, and we love clergy, we love the attitudes of priests, we love the separation from clergy to congregation, and none of that is Father's design. It wasn't his design back in the day of Israel. It's not his design now, and these are things that we really should wrestle over, because this has to do with relationship. Dad doesn't want it destroyed by one person. He does not want the power concentrated in one person, because one person can take the whole thing off the rails. When there were 4 offices, there was checks and balances there, and accountability. If you get a king that isn't accountable, man, he's a tyrant, and that's what happens. So I just want to encourage you today. You are important. You are significant. Your place in the body has been chosen by the Spirit, and you are to operate in it. And so I just want to encourage you in that today. Don't give your authority, don't give your responsibility over to anybody else. That's yours to carry. You guys have a great day. Stay safe. Love you all.